actions are predestined to be performed, but in the process, they give birth to unexplored possibilities. Should the boat called execution chart a course so precise that not a single ripple escapes, or should it surrender itself to the margins of flux? Even the fingertips that weave around the question are an act. Surrender is not an abandonment of the will, but a transformation of the inherent will into the rhythm of the world. If the thorough execution is the rigid form of the end of control, surrender is an attempt to unravel it and turn it into a delicate mesh. If the architecture built on the basis of a blueprint that calculates all the equilibrium of incompleteness is rigidity that does not allow for minute errors, the structure that opens the pathway for the wind embodies rather flexible completion. In the name of execution, it builds a forced continuity that does not allow any disconnection, while at the same time scooping up a softly wavering gap inside the execution. This is where the aesthetics of delay resides. If we overlook the slightest tremor in the world because we are in such a hurry to reach every corner, it is violence rather than execution. The execution entrusted to us reflects the breath of the world, folds into it, and drifts between slumber and awakening. The most acute, the most precise, the most complete, the execution becomes rigid and loses its margin of surrender. If the execution is a boat, a leaf that hovers between the waves of the will, it can cross the channel and listen to the faraway currents. For example, a hand in the name of execution caresses the world, as if gently slipping the last light into the cracks of endlessly folded paper. A fluid precision permeates the entire area, to the point where even the distinction between who entrusts and who receives is meaningless. Intentions have already been given up, and decisions continue to waver even at the end of the act. When all lines are reduced to countless dots, the execution is not mere motion, but is the very breath that accompanies the space. There is not a single point of stagnation, no surplus, no lack, but a beautiful state of distribution, a trajectory of will that transcends the boundaries of consciousness. The perfect execution is no longer in the hands of the executor, and at the end of the process, when all corners have been reached, even one's own will is exceeded and one simply accepts becoming. The multiple intentions that breathe at the edge of the shadows, the released arrows entangled in the chasm of time and space, search for the consigner of an unseen end. The touch of the word reach is in the form of a palm that embraces all that cannot be touched. Each time the elaborate plan becomes a drop of time and flows down slowly, the completion becomes an attempt, and the attempt conceals another execution. Rather than craving for completion, incompletion is achieved slowly and surely, as if a hint of the sea is dwelling in the net that is just beginning to be woven, and every inch of the work is completed. At the moment when thousands of choices spread out like a tree, we entrust our shadows. Light does not dictate form, but shadow attracts light. The supreme execution is a distillation of trajectories, a clear move that emerges by abandoning hesitation, or a vast margin that embraces even hesitation. Whenever we stand at a fork in the road, it is important not to know the weight of the decision, but to realize the clarity of the decision. Delegation is not abandonment. It is a soft conduit through which the power of will continues to circulate, filling the world with quiet execution, like water piercing rock or time penetrating consciousness. It is not a series of details creating a whole, but the breath of the whole coloring the details. What reaches every nook and cranny is already here, tracing the folds of time. Music without sound fills the space, and an unnameable rhythm exists as a subtle vibration. The ambiguous will, oscillating between command and release, may draw the outline of perfection in the midst of unintentional action. The faint flashes of inspiration that fray at the edges of our consciousness will one day be held in unknown hands and nurtured in the chaos of the unclaimed. In any case, if the destination is a blank, the whole becomes a mere illusion the moment the details are neglected. Execution is the proof of will, and it is only when it reaches every corner that the one completes itself. If we entrust its execution, it is the letting go of the will, the dissolution of the self. A contradiction? No, rather a paradox of cosmic harmony. To use an analogy, a star carries out its own combustion, but leaves the direction of its light to the wind. A tree, while carrying out its rooting, sometimes leaves the swaying of its branches to the wind. Surrender is not abandonment, but a more subtle form of execution.